Hello, children. Today we are going to read an amusing and interesting comic story named Gopal and the Hilsa Fish. A comic book is a sequence of a story with drawing or pictures arranged to narrate an amusing story for entertainment purpose. Now, you all might have read books like Tinkle Comics or Balarama, Poombata, and other comic strips, which are really interesting for the children to read. This story's summary is a mixture of humor, wit, and intelligence. It starts with the propaganda of the Hilsa fish and the irritation caused to the king, who is fed up of listening about the most happening thing, which is the Hilsa fish. The king wants his courtiers to stop this discussion, but it seems impossible. Then Gopal, a clever courtier, comments that it is not an impossible task. This makes the king throw a challenge on Gopal to buy Hilsa fish from the market and come up to the palace without anybody talking about the fish. Gopal readily accepts it and uses his wit to win the challenge. So this is what we notice in the story. Here begins the story. It was the season of Hilsa fish, where everybody in the town, in the village, was talking only about Hilsa fish. From the fishmongers to the native people, everybody was interested in talking about how many fishes they bought, for how much money they bought, and how they are going to cook it. Even in the king's palace, people had started talking about the Hilsa fish, and this was irritating the king little by little. Finally, when the discussion became too much, the king got really irritated and he asked his courtiers that whether they were fishmongers or courtiers, they should at any cost stop talking about the fish. But this seemed to be an impossible task, and the king really got irritated. This is when Gopal interrupts and says that it is not a very difficult task to stop the discussion of Hilsa fish. This makes the king a little irritated, and he thinks, why not pose a challenge on Gopal? And he says to Gopal, okay, fine. If you are so confident about making the people stop about talking about the Hilsa fish, then I throw a challenge upon you. Then let me see if you can buy a huge Hilsa fish and bring it to the palace with anyone not talking about the fish, and you are able to come back to the palace without anybody asking you about it. Gopal immediately accepted the challenge, but it took a little time for him to plan out how he is going to work upon this. A few days later, an idea flashed into his mind and he started planning how to go about it. He shaved half of his face and left the other part of his face unshaven. Seeing this peculiar action of Gopal, his wife asked him, "What is the matter with you? Why have you kept your face half shaven?" And Gopal also started smearing ash on his face. When his wife asked him such questions, Gopal just said that he is going to buy a big Hilsa fish. He never disclosed his secret. He wore a dirty and a horrible dress, and he was planning to walk out of his house. This made his wife go all the more crazy. She was wondering what is wrong with her husband, and she asked him that why he was wearing such terrible dress to make himself look so disgraceful. At At this also, Gopal never told her anything. He just told that he is going to buy a Hilsa fish. The poor wife thought that Gopal is going mad. Gopal reached the market and see what he is doing. He bought a big Hilsa fish and he started walking towards the palace. But it was a real surprise that the people around in that area, nobody looked at the fish. Everybody was only looking at the peculiar looks of Gopal. The way he had dressed, the way his face looked, everything was so amusing for the people that they completely forgot the topic about the Hilsa fish. And people started commenting him that he is a madman or else he is a mystic. Finally, Gopal reached the front gate of the palace and he wanted to enter. But the guards found him as a madman and they did not allow him to enter. Gopal kept on saying that he wanted to enter the king's palace. And since he was not allowed to get in, he started singing and dancing in front of the palace. Hearing his terrible sound, everybody in the palace understood that there's something going wrong outside. Inside the palace, the king also inquired that who had been singing so badly outside. The soldiers informed him that it was like a madman who is singing. But the king said, "Bring that man to me at once." And the soldier had to listen to it. When Gopal was brought in front of the king, everybody recognized Gopal and they started laughing. And they thought it was some joke by Gopal, because generally Gopal was known for his wisdom and intelligence. But today he looked so comical and he in fact looked like a madman too. Then Gopal started having a conversation with the king, and the king asked him that why he was dressed in such a ridiculous manner. At that time, Gopal said, "Your Majesty, you seem to have forgotten something." The king really thought upon it and he said he can't remember what he has forgotten. Then Gopal disclosed the challenge that had been posed to him by the king. Then the king realized and he said, "Oh wow, Gopal, once again you have won my heart. You have lived up to your challenge and with the help of your wisdom, you have won the challenge." Now this is all because Gopal was witty, clever and had lot of wisdom. People in the kingdom were talking about the Hilsa fish because that was the most happening thing in the town. But the day Gopal stepped out of the house in a weird costume and weird and peculiar makeup, people found him more attractive than the Hilsa fish. That is why all the way long from the fish market to the palace, nobody noticed the Hilsa fish in his hand and they only looked at Gopal. Thus, Gopal once again proved that wisdom and intelligence can win anything. Nothing is impossible.